Hello, darlings. This is Eva Gabor. Recently, I had the privilege of visiting President Nixon at the White House for United States saving bonds.
Once upon a time, the Gabor sisters, Magda, Zsa Zsa, and Eva, were constantly in the spotlight, making headlines and capturing everyone's attention. Often compared to modern celebrity dynasties like the Kardashians or Hiltons, they dabbled in acting, business, and high society. Yet above all, they were famous for being famous. With charm, glamour, and ambition, they moved effortlessly between Hollywood, European nobility, and elite social circles, always leaving a lasting impression wherever they went.
Left 4 times past 6 to 11. Right twice to 9. Left to 3. And open.
Mother's starry ambitions. Jolie Gabor was nearly as famous as her daughters would become. Growing up in post-World War I Hungary, she enjoyed a comfortable life thanks to her family's successful costume jewelry business. From a young age, she dreamed of the stage, wanting to become Hungary's next big star, a dream that almost made her abandon her family entirely. At just 17, Jolie married Hungarian army officer Vilmos Gabor. It wasn't a love match. Their 6-month contract even allowed her to leave if she still wanted to chase fame. Vilmos, however, was determined to have a son, and instead they had 3 daughters. After the birth of Magda, Jolie tried to leave to pursue her acting ambitions, but Vilmos allegedly threatened to drop Magda out of a window if she left. She stayed, giving birth to Zsa Zsa, with Vilmos promising divorce only if she tried once more for a boy. When Eva was born in 1919, Jolie made another attempt to leave her family for the stage, but Vilmos laughed it off. "Now you are too old," he reportedly said, according to Such Devoted Sisters, Those Fabulous Gabors by Peter H. Brown. Raised with military precision. When Jolie Gabor couldn't fulfill her own dreams of fame, she poured every ounce of ambition into her daughters. The Gabor girls' childhoods were meticulously scheduled, from breakfast to school to endless hours of lessons and practice. Jolie's goal was clear: prepare them for stardom at any cost. The sisters were pushed through a rigorous routine that included dancing, piano, fencing, and intensive language studies, German, French, and English. As Eva Gabor later said, "We could talk about nothing in 4 languages," according to Such Devoted Sisters, Those Fabulous Gabors. Jolie's discipline often went beyond strict schedules. Sometimes it bordered on extreme. On one occasion, she took her daughters to a lake and tossed them from a rowboat, even though none of them could swim. This, she believed, would teach them the value of survival. Magda Gabor recalled, "Amazingly, we didn't drown. We managed to stay afloat until Mama allowed us back in the boat. It felt like we'd swallowed gallons." Those glamorous Gabors, bombshells from Budapest, Darwin Potter. A royal match for Zsa Zsa? While the Gabor sisters' lives were often filled with highly publicized marriages that made regular headlines, there were also lesser-known attempts at matchmaking that happened behind the scenes. Perhaps the most remarkable and somewhat shocking example occurred when Jolie Gabor tried to arrange a future marriage between her daughter Zsa Zsa, who was only 12 years old at the time, and the Prince of Wales, the future King Edward VIII. In her 1991 memoir, One Lifetime Is Not Enough, Zsa Zsa recalls this episode at the start of the book. By chance, her mother witnessed the Prince of Wales with his future wife Wallis Simpson at the Ritz Hotel in Budapest. Impressed by the care and attention Edward showed Simpson, Jolie immediately decided she wanted to set up a possible marriage between him and her young daughter Zsa Zsa. So taken by this display of princely devotion, my mother quickly wrote to Buckingham Palace, informing the prince that upon returning from Hungary, he should consider marrying her little daughter Zsa Zsa as soon as she reached the appropriate age, Zsa Zsa later recounted. Darwin Porter, in his book, Those Glamorous Gabors, Bombshells from Budapest, confirms that this meeting between Jolie and Edward did indeed take place. Jolie even went so far as to present the prince with a letter and a photograph of young Zsa Zsa. "I told him that you are growing more beautiful every day, and that in just a few years you will be one of the most dazzling beauties in Europe, fit to sit upon his throne as Queen of England when he becomes king," the note reportedly read. A life-changing trip in Vienna for Zsa Zsa Gabor. Saying that Zsa Zsa Gabor led a fascinating life might actually understate the reality. Remarkably, despite all of the fame and accomplishments the world-famous socialite amassed over the years, her very first trip to Vienna, Austria, would remain one of her most cherished memories. In her memoir, Zsa Zsa described the journey as a trip that changed the course of my entire life. At the age of 15, Zsa Zsa competed in the Miss Hungary beauty pageant and initially won. However, she was later disqualified when it became clear that she was too young to participate. This loss was devastating for her, but it particularly enraged her parents, especially her mother, who openly admitted to living vicariously through her middle daughter's success. The setback angered Jolie Gabor so much that she allegedly struck the pageant director after learning about Zsa Zsa's disqualification. Jolie refused to let this disappointment stand in the way of her daughter's rise to fame. She promptly enrolled Zsa Zsa in another local talent competition, which eventually opened the path to Vienna. Upon arriving in the Austrian capital, Zsa Zsa was instantly captivated, famously declaring, "I should have been born Viennese," according to those glamorous Gabors bombshells from Budapest. Their time in Vienna was packed with a series of memorable adventures. Zsa Zsa enjoyed a shopping tour with the celebrated singer Greta Keller, participated in an Austrian operetta, and even had the opportunity to meet Hedy Lamarr, one of the era's most glamorous stars. Zsa Zsa never forgot either the city or her encounter with Lamarr. In her memoir, she wrote, "I fixed the brilliant image of Hedy in my mind forever, knowing somehow that I, Zsa Zsa, would one day equal and even surpass her." Magda Gabor and the Hungarian resistance. Magda Gabor, often considered the least famous of the three Gabor sisters, led a life that was anything but ordinary. In fact, some might argue that her experiences during World War II made her the most intriguing of them all. By 1941, while married to a Polish count, Magda began a discreet relationship with Carlos de Sampaio Garrido, the Portuguese ambassador to Hungary. He was significantly older, decades her senior, but through this connection, Magda found herself drawn into the shadowy world of espionage. Under Garrido's guidance, she became involved in breaking Nazi codes. Biographer Peter Brown notes that Magda memorized the ciphers used by Portuguese operatives to communicate with the dwindling European resistance. Her contributions didn't end with code breaking. Magda also collaborated with members of the Hungarian resistance, helping soldiers evade capture by smuggling civilian clothes to them, allowing them to blend in and escape Nazi pursuit. Her wartime efforts were deeply personal. Magda's family had Jewish roots, and both of her parents were still in Hungary during the Nazi occupation. In 1944, as the situation became increasingly dangerous, Garrido learned that the Nazis planned to arrest Magda. Thanks to the ambassador's intervention, she and her family narrowly avoided capture by the Gestapo, escaping almost by a miracle. How one screen test shaped Eva Gabor's career. Eva Gabor is often remembered as the sister who achieved the most on-screen success, thanks largely to her iconic role in Green Acres and her unforgettable voice work in Disney's The Rescuers. Yet, according to Eva herself and some other sources, her rise to Hollywood fame might have been even faster if not for a single screen test. By 1939, Eva was living in Hollywood, still struggling with English, at the height of the industry's golden age. She landed a promising opportunity to audition for My Life with Caroline, directed by Louis Milestone, famed for the 1930 classic All Quiet on the Western Front and starring Ronald Colman. Eva's audition was heartfelt, and her beauty and emotional performance impressed everyone. She left the studio feeling elated, certain that a major breakthrough was within reach. But when the test footage was reviewed by Paramount executives and Colman himself, they were struck by something unexpected. Eva looked far too young on screen. While her acting was praised, her youthful appearance made the studio hesitate. That one detail cost her the role, and the mischance stayed with her for many years. Eva later reflected on the experience, saying, "If I hadn't photographed too young, I would have become a big star. They already had the contract ready," as noted in Such Devoted Sisters, Those Fabulous Gabors. Zsa Zsa Gabor's surprising TV appearance. Few shows are as instantly recognizable as the 1960s Batman series with Adam West. Its exaggerated bam and pow moments might seem campy today, but back then they were television gold. When ratings began to dip in 1968, the series was set to air its final episode in March. One might expect familiar villains like Cesar Romero's Joker or Burgess Meredith's Penguin to make the send-off memorable, but instead, it was Zsa Zsa Gabor stepping in as Minerva. In this closing episode, titled Minerva Mayhem and Millionaires, Zsa Zsa played a clever thief who targeted Gotham's wealthy elite. Her character used a contraption called the Deepest Secret Extractor to discover where the city's millionaires hid their fortunes. Taking on the final villain role in such an iconic series added a unique highlight to Gabor's television legacy. Years later, in 1991, Zsa Zsa made another memorable TV cameo on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. In the Season 2 episode, Hi-Ho Silver, she appeared as the glamorous actress Sonia L'Amour. A comical mix-up leads Will and his cousin Carlton to believe she has stolen from them, prompting them to borrow her exquisite silverware in a hilarious chain of events. Once again, Zsa Zsa's charm and timing made her stand out, even in guest appearances. Magda Gabor's legal struggle and triumph. In 1966, Magda Gabor's life took a sudden and dramatic turn. One evening, while descending the stairs, she tripped over her dog and fell, striking her head. At first, her husband Arthur Tony Gallucci, a wealthy New York contractor, and her mother believed the injury was nothing serious, just a nasty bump. But days later, after attending the Southampton Horse Show with her usual lively spirit, Magda suffered a severe stroke. The stroke left her confined to a wheelchair and limited her speech to a few words. Soon after, tragedy struck again when her husband was diagnosed with terminal cancer and passed away in 1967. Left to navigate the complexities of her late husband's vast estate, Magda faced a difficult legal battle with the Gallucci family. Determined, she immersed herself in legal texts and educated herself on the law. As her sister Jolie Gabor recounted in Such Devoted Sisters, it was unbelievable the way she handled herself during this troubled time. By reading law books, she helped build her own case and sat next to her lawyers, giving them one-word directions as the hearing progressed. Magda ultimately emerged victorious, securing millions from the estate. Following the legal victory, she relocated to Palm Springs, where she quickly became a prominent socialite and an active supporter of the local art scene. Despite her speech limitations, she never lost the vibrant, extroverted energy that was the hallmark of every Gabor sister, leaving a lasting impression on everyone she met. The Gabor sisters and their many marriages. When discussing the Gabor sisters, their romantic lives inevitably come up, most notably the sheer number of times they married, 20 in total. Magda Gabor tied the knot 6 times. Zsa Zsa Gabor married 9 times, including some high-profile unions, most famously with hotel magnate Conrad Hilton and German-American socialite Friedrich Prinz von Anhalt. Eva Gabor had 5 marriages, her last being to Frank Gard Jameson Jr., a prominent figure in the aerospace industry, which ended in 1983. Each marriage brought its own drama and peculiarities. For instance, Zsa Zsa's 8th marriage to Mexican actor Felipe de Alba was annulled after just 1 day. Magda's 5th marriage was to British actor George Sanders, who had previously been married to Zsa Zsa. Out of all 20 marriages, only 1 produced a child. Zsa Zsa had a daughter, Francesca, with Conrad Hilton in 1947. However, in her memoir, One Lifetime Is Not Enough, Zsa Zsa revealed that Francesca's birth was the result of sexual assault by Hilton, adding a tragic note to her otherwise glamorous life story. Zsa Zsa Gabor's final years. Zsa Zsa Gabor passed away in December 2016 at the age of 99, closing the final chapter on a life that had once sparkled with glamour and excitement. Yet her last years were marked by profound hardship and severe health struggles. In 2002, she was involved in a car accident in Los Angeles that left her partially paralyzed. 3 years later, she suffered a stroke, requiring urgent surgery, and in 2011, a serious infection led doctors to amputate her right leg. Those close to her reported that in the 5 years leading up to her death, Zsa Zsa was largely unresponsive, battling advanced dementia and depending entirely on life support. Her publicist, Ed Lotze, described her condition to NPR, saying, "I am pleased that she is finally out of her misery. For the past 5 years, Zsa Zsa suffered chronic dementia, confined to her mansion in a hospital bed, fed through tubes, unable to speak, see, write, or hear. she did not recognize herself or her fame. Zsa Zsa was the last surviving member of the Gabor family, outliving her sisters and her daughter. Nearly 5 years after her passing, her ashes were laid to rest in her native Hungary, bringing the storied legacy of the Gabors full circle. And so ends the extraordinary saga of the Gabor sisters, a family of glamour, drama, and ambition. From royal matchmaking and daring escapes to espionage and Hollywood stardom, their lives were unforgettable. The Gabors were truly in a league of their own.